A high-pitched scream echoed from the alley, punctuated by a sickening, wet crunch. Hannah's blue eyes, wide with horror, stared into the abyss of the dating app as the profile picture changed from a chiseled model to a grinning monstrosity, dripping with fresh, oozing blood. Hannah was a 25-year-old graphic designer living in a metropolitan city. Life had become a series of routine tasks: wake up, work, go to the gym, sleep. Socially, things had stagnated. Her friends were slowly settling down or moving away, and the empty void of loneliness gnawed at her daily. Eager for a connection, she had downloaded the newest dating app, Heart's Desire. It promised deep compatibility and life-changing encounters. The app had a sleek interface, crimson hearts pulsating gently with each potential match, echoing the beat of an actual heart. Upon installing, it asked for peculiar permissions, access to her fears, dreams, and emotions. She found it a tad unconventional, but thought it was likely some high-tech psychology-based matching. So, she granted them all. She spent hours swiping, lost in a vortex of profiles, until she came across one that made her heart race. A man named Eric, a sculpted model with piercing blue eyes that mirrored her own. Without hesitation, she swiped right, and instantly, they matched. The chat was electrifying. Eric knew her likes, dislikes, and even some of her deepest fears. The conversation flowed as if they had known each other forever. But things took a chilling turn when she decided to meet him. She proposed a coffee shop, but Eric insisted on a quiet alley he claimed was magical at sunset. Feeling a rush of excitement and adventure, she agreed. Arriving at the alley, dusk was painting the sky with shades of purple and gold. But Eric was nowhere to be seen. Instead, a chilling wind wrapped around her, carrying with it faint whispers and cries. Suddenly, her phone buzzed. A message from Eric: "Look at the app." And as she did, his picture transformed. From the stunning model to a grotesque face, one eye dangling, skin a patchwork of decay, mouth twisted in a horrific grin. The alley walls seemed to close in. Behind her, she heard a shuffling sound. Turning, she was met with a vision of pure horror. The real Eric emerged from the shadows, his body a writhing mass of scar tissue, organs exposed and glistening under the dim light. He dragged one leg, leaving a streak of blood in his wake. "Did you really think it was that easy to find love, Hannah?" Eric's voice was a guttural whisper, each syllable dripping with malevolence. And as he spoke, other figures emerged from the shadows, other victims, some with their throats slashed, others with eyes gouged out, all lurching towards her, driven by an insatiable hunger. In that very moment, the app sent her a notification: "Do you wish to continue with your match? Swipe left for death, right for a life of torment." What would you do if faced with a similar situation? The left swipe seemed to promise a swift end, but right, what horrors did a life of torment hold? Fear paralyzed Hannah, the choices on her phone screen glowing eerily in the dim light. The grotesque Eric took another lurching step forward, causing a pool of blood to splatter beneath his mangled foot. As she hesitated, one of the other figures, a woman with matted hair and slashed wrists, lunged at her, missing her by inches. Panicking, Hannah swiped right. The phone screen flashed a blinding white, and for a moment, everything around her seemed to blur and fade. When she could finally see again, she found herself in a subterranean chamber, the walls glistening with moisture and covered in creeping roots. The stench of decay and dampness permeated the air. On a pedestal in the center of the room lay her phone, now larger and transformed into an ancient-looking artifact. It pulsed with an unnatural heartbeat. Surrounding the pedestal were 3 doors, each adorned with grotesque carvings depicting scenes of torture, despair, and transformation. Eric's voice echoed through the chamber, devoid of any human warmth. 3 doors, Hannah. Behind each is a trial. If you pass all 3, you may earn your freedom. Fail, and you become a permanent resident of my collection. The first door bore an inscription, "Face your deepest fears." As she approached, the door swung open on its own, revealing an abyss of darkness. Reluctantly, she stepped in. The door slammed shut behind her. Inside, she was met with a manifestation of her most primal fears. The darkness itself seemed alive, wrapping around her, suffocating her. Whispers taunted her, recounting every failure, every regret. Every slight she ever experienced was replayed, every self-doubt amplified. Shadows in the shapes of monstrous spiders crawled up her legs. The chilling sensation of unseen entities brushed against her, cold fingers tracing her spine. But amidst the chaos, a single thought prevailed: she had to survive. Using her designer's intuition, she focused on the one thing that always grounded her, the memory of her first design project. This memory acted as her beacon. Slowly, she navigated through the dark, using the warmth of this memory to dispel the fears. After what felt like hours, a faint light appeared in the distance. She staggered towards it and found herself back in the chamber, gasping for air. The first trial was over, but two more awaited. And the room seemed even colder, the air even thicker with menace. What would you do if faced with the darkest corners of your own psyche, each fear tangible and hunting you? Would you find the strength to move forward, or would you be consumed? Having braved the onslaught of her deepest fears, Hannah steeled herself for the next trial. The second door had a chilling inscription: "Relive your greatest pains." She hesitated, remembering past heartbreaks, physical injuries, and traumas. When she opened the door, the room she entered was a grotesque gallery of her own life. Scenes from her past played out on stretched, sinewy canvases made from human flesh. Each tableau was a memory steeped in pain. There she was as a child, witnessing her beloved pet being run over. Then, as a teenager, experiencing her first heartbreak as she watched her boyfriend kiss her best friend. Another depicted the day she learned of her father's terminal illness, the very moment she felt her heart shattered. But the most agonizing scene was yet to come. In the center of the room stood a life-sized recreation of her younger self, bound to a chair. Surrounding her were shadowy figures, each holding an instrument of torture. As Hannah watched, frozen in horror, the figures began their macabre symphony. Each tool they used, from the scalpel to the bone saw, played upon her younger self, mimicking the very pains Hannah had experienced throughout her life. The room was filled with the shrill screams of her own past self, every ounce of agony amplified. To end the trial, she had to intervene. Summoning every ounce of courage, Hannah lunged at the figures, wresting the tools from their hands and using them to fend off her tormentors. Each confrontation was not just physical but emotional, forcing Hannah to confront and accept each painful memory. After an intense battle, the figures dissipated into mist, leaving Hannah alone in the room, exhausted but alive. She had not just survived, but faced and embraced her past traumas. As she returned to the central chamber, the weight of her experiences weighed heavily on her shoulders. One trial remained. What would you do if every painful memory, every scar on your soul, was given form in life, demanding acknowledgement and confrontation? Would you run or find the strength to face them head-on? The third and final door stood imposingly before Hannah, its inscription sending chills down her spine: "Sacrifice what you hold dear." Bracing herself, Hannah pushed open the door. The room inside was unlike any she had ever seen. It was a vast, endless void, with floating islands of rock connected by fragile-looking stone bridges. On the furthest island, suspended in a cage made of pulsating, writhing vines, was her younger sister, Amy. Her eyes were filled with terror, and her pleas echoed through the void. Eric's voice boomed around her: "To gain your freedom, someone else must take your place. Will you save yourself and leave your sister to a fate worse than death? Or will you make the ultimate sacrifice?" Hannah's heart raced. Amy was more than just a sibling, she was her confidant, her protector, the beacon of light in her darkest moments. The thought of leaving her behind was unbearable. But the terror of the trials and the lure of freedom weighed heavily on her. As she made her way across the stone bridges, monstrous creatures rose from the abyss below. They had faces that were distorted reflections of Hannah and Amy, twisted by anguish and despair. Their moans were like haunting lullabies, trying to pull her into the depths. With each step, the choice became more daunting. Memories of their shared childhood flooded her mind, their first bike ride, late-night secrets, and the pact they made to always protect each other. Reaching the final island, Hannah knew what she had to do. She approached the cage and whispered words of comfort to Amy, promising that she would find a way to free them both. Placing her hand on the cage, she began to chant an improvised incantation, pouring all her love and memories into her words. The cage started to quiver, the vines retracting and releasing Amy. But as Amy was freed, the ground beneath Hannah began to crumble, and she felt herself being pulled towards the abyss. With tears in her eyes, Hannah shouted for Amy to run, sacrificing herself to save her sister. As she plummeted into the darkness, she felt a momentary peace, knowing she had stayed true to their childhood pact. If faced with an impossible decision between your life and that of someone you love, what would you do? Would you have the strength to make the ultimate sacrifice? Hannah plummeted deeper into the abyss, the cold darkness wrapping around her like a shroud. Just as she braced herself for the end, she felt a warmth enveloping her, pulling her back from the precipice of despair. A radiant golden light surrounded her, and she found herself floating in a realm untouched by time. The spirits of her ancestors materialized before her, their forms shimmering with an ethereal glow. They spoke of her courage and sacrifice, declaring that such selflessness should not go unrewarded. They granted her a choice, to ascend to an eternal paradise with them or return to the mortal world with a gift. Thinking of Amy and the horror she endured, Hannah chose to return, asking for the power to protect others from the monstrous Eric and his cursed app. She was transported back to her apartment, the horrors of the trials feeling like a distant nightmare. But the memory of her sacrifice and the weight of her new responsibility were all too real. With newfound determination, Hannah began her crusade against heart's desire. She leveraged her skills as a graphic designer to create compelling campaigns warning people of its dangers. She also found that she had been gifted with the ability to detect and neutralize dark energies. This allowed her to help victims of the app, purging the malevolent influence from their lives. As months turned into years, Hannah's mission grew. She established the sacred Sanctum, an organization dedicated to fighting against supernatural threats lurking in the digital realm. With Amy by her side and a team of like-minded individuals, they delved into the underbelly of cursed apps, haunted games, and malevolent AIs, ensuring that no one else would have to endure the horrors that Hannah faced. As for Eric, he remained elusive. But every now and then, Hannah would find traces of his dark influence, a reminder that the battle was far from over. After hearing this harrowing tale, what would you do if faced with the allure of the unknown, the promise of desires fulfilled at the tap of a screen? Would you heed the warnings or fall prey to the shadows lurking behind the pixels? You've journeyed with us through the dark corridors of digital horrors. If this tale resonated with you, if it made your heart race and your skin crawl, then join us in our crusade. Subscribe to Sacred Sanctum, like this narration, and share your thoughts in the comments. Together, we'll shine a light on the darkest corners of the web. Until next time, stay vigilant and stay safe.